A couple of weeks ago I watched Longlegs. It was alright, but it wasn't anything new. What shocked me more was how frightened my friend was by, from my point of view, tame, boring and predictable shit. It got me thinking about how little horror films had actually managed to spook me like my friend was, and I kind of envied him in a way. I was jealous of his fear because while I was sat there checking the time, he was fully immersed in what to him was a truly scary experience. And that was when I decided to rewatch this film. I don't think I've ever seen a found footage film quite as realistic and believable as the Blair Witch Project. If somebody told you it was actually found footage of 3 students who went missing in the woods, you could believe it. And the problem with most modern found footage horror films begins and ends right there. I mean, could you honestly say the same for Grave Encounters, The Visit, or even Paranormal Activity? The Blair Witch Project was a huge cultural phenomenon and commercial success. It grossed nearly $250 million at a budget of only $60,000, standing as one of the most successful independent films of all time. Its less is more approach leaves everything to your own imagination, a place where no number of creepy visuals could truly compare. Another thing that makes the Blair Witch Project so unique is its lack of music. If you were to randomly skip to a scene in a horror film today, you'd probably stumble on the same standard music in the background. It's only silent moments that are put before an overused and predictable jump scare we've become so accustomed to, we end up on edge expecting them the whole time. I'm not saying music is always an issue though. In fact, some of the most memorable horror movie moments are accompanied by music. What I am saying is that there's usually an oversaturation of sound. Whereas every crunch, snap and rustle I heard in the Blair Witch was amplified by silence. Loud musical cues only serve to tell me I'm supposed to be scared, similarly to how a laugh track would tell an audience they're supposed to laugh. Take this scene for example, and tell me which one you find more disturbing, with or without music. Audiences aren't as suggestible as they once were. We've become so self-aware that we won't be harmed by what's on screen that it's generally getting harder and harder for films to truly scare us. An article in Psychology Today says, fear is generally considered a reaction to something immediate that threatens your security or safety. The emotion of fear is felt as a sense of dread, alerting you to the possibility that your physical self might be harmed. So, if we know there's no real threat or immediate danger, how are we expected to feel scared? I mean, of course, it boils down to a whole science in audio and visual trickery. As Roman Polanski put it quite simply, cinema should make you forget you're sitting in the theatre. Quickly releasing tension, jump scares only serve to tell us their physical lack of consequence. Stretching the disconnect between us and the movie, it becomes somewhat frustrating. Films and moving images aren't just used for entertainment though. In fact, the first ever recording of images in rapid succession was used to settle a debate. In 1872, Leland Stanford, a racehorse owner, had asked an interesting question. Is there ever a moment during a horse's gallop when all feet are off the ground? It seems obvious now, but this was a time when we could only base our perception of motion in real time. We couldn't rewind, pause and look back again. Everything that happened was absolutely in the present and soon in the forgotten past. This is why paintings of galloping horses were often inaccurate, with their legs stretched out at both ends. Stanford had become determined on finding the answer and hired Edward Muybridge for his study. 6 years later, this was created. This is the first ever recording of motion image. The first ever motion picture film is from 1888 by French inventor Louis Le Prince. Blink and you'll miss it. It's literally 2 seconds long. But the only way we could see these films was to look inside something very small, private and individual. Cinema had to be bigger. The Lumiere brothers were the first to discover that the mechanism of sewing machines would allow strips of film to be advanced, paused and exposed, and soon invented a camera that doubled as a projector. Cinema started to get bigger. Now, rather than being shown to one person at a time, movies could be shown to groups of people. It's hard for us today to picture how fascinating it must have been to watch the famous Arrival of a Train from 1896. It's even said to have frightened the audience because they felt the train was coming right at them through the screen. Fear is a complicated subject. What you find scary is different to me, just like my friend with long legs. He didn't really enjoy the Blair Witch Project nor find it all that scary. But there is a logic to it. Mostly. I mean, you see, sometimes even when we know there's no real threat or immediate danger, the hairs can't help but stand up on the back of our necks. It wasn't until the 19th century when some of us started to call this touch of the uncanny the creeps. The novel David Copperfield by Charles Dickens was the first to use this phrase to mean an unpleasant, tingly chill up the spine. It's the Momo picture. It's the sketch of a man people have seen in their dreams. It's the feeling of being watched through the windows when you're home alone. But to others, it's pickles and mustard.
Okay, Louise, you're not going to believe this. Louise is petrified of mustard.
Oh my God! Look at it! Get away from me!
Sit down.
Look at it! Look at
That's
it!
just a picture.
Look at it! It's disgusting!
I got to talk to you about
Are
this.
you nuts? Are you nuts?
All right, take it off the screen.
Omphalophobia is the extreme fear of belly buttons. It causes people to shake, tense up, and panic in swimming pools. Sometimes our emotional responses just don't make all that much sense. A visually unsettling example of the creeps is the... Wait, what is that?
I begin to believe you're not doing this for the good of the boy, but to cause me pain. He is mine. If you won't let me see him, I will find a way.
Sometimes our perception even leads us to see things that aren't really there. We spook ourselves out by falling victim to our own pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find meaningful patterns and faces in randomness. We find fun in spotting things others overlooked and apply meaning to them almost immediately. This is a picture taken from the 9/11 attacks. It soon sparked interest among a bunch of newspaper publishers because the smoke looks a little bit like the face of a demon. Believe it or not, people genuinely found this scary, maybe even you do. Movies sometimes struggle evoking fear because we have no real interaction with them. Everything's pointed out to us. Of course, tension comes from the idea of being unable to change the outcome of a scene or a moment. But to me, fear's stronger when we walk through them, finding, participating, and making the conscious decision of what to look at and listen to, unsure of what that thing even is. In December 2014 in Northern Virginia, a Reddit user claimed they had been woken from their sleep by a loud noise at 2 a.m. While the rest of their family stayed in bed, they went outside to record the noise, which seemed to be coming from the woods behind their house. The audio clip sounds like a distressed woman screaming in pain or for help, although it's difficult to know exactly what the sound is. The voices sound very disturbed and distinctly human, ruling out suggestions guessing they could be from an animal. The user checked news outlets in the following days but was unable to find anything in print or online about what they had heard. To this day, the noise in the woods remains a mystery. We don't do well with ambiguity, the idea of not knowing. We often find uncertainty more unpleasant than unpleasant certainty. At least if we know it, we can make sense of it. The term horror wasn't used to describe a film genre until the 1930s. At the time, these early horror films were called spook tales. Oh, this is too spooky for me, this one. Soon, the earliest filmmaker inventors turned their minds from the machinery of cinema to shots and cuts. French illusionist Georges Méliès first invented the cut when he discovered a camera jam had created an interesting effect. When he looked back at the footage, streetcars seemed to jump and disappear. This was cinema's first magic trick. He used it in the 1896 short The Devil's Castle to make witches and ghosts appear and disappear in puffs of smoke. This, on record, is the first ever horror film of all time. Fast forward to now and we've innovated an immense amount of techniques. For example, infrasound, which is a frequency below 20 Hz, put in scenes to naturally unsettle humans. It can't be heard, but it can be felt by the body. It makes us feel uneasy because it innately reminds us of anything destructive, like avalanches or earthquakes. We also have subliminal messages, underexposure, jump scares, anticipation, tight framing, reflections and mirrors, non-linear sounds and abrupt colour changes. A personal favourite of mine is the POV shot, like this moment from The Shining. Now, I'm not saying the fear's lost in all modern horror films. What I am saying is that it's definitely the hardest genre to get right, and through time that's only getting more and more apparent. In 1999, for the release of the Blair Witch Project, audiences went into theatres legitimately thinking the people were missing and presumed dead. Months leading up to this, producers handed out flyers at festivals asking people to come forward with any information about the supposedly missing students. The director himself even made a website to help further spread the myth of the Blair Witch. Surely enough, this grew speculation and confusion on where the facts ended and the fiction begun. Nowadays, its slow burn, less is more style tends to frustrate an audience more conditioned to colourful, flashy visuals, but it remains the godfather of found footage. It wasn't the first of its kind, but it was definitely the most influential. Particularly violent movies like Hostel and Saw are hugely popular. But why? I mean, viewing scenes of carnage, anger and cruelty is a little sadistic, right? We enjoy watching people gagged up, threatened and tortured because it releases repressed anger and aggression. It's a catharsis, a cleansing of our own emotions that ultimately gives us strength. As Stephen King put it, we make up horrors to help us cope with the real ones.
What are you doing?
Oh, you're alright, mate.
Do you want to get pissed?
And do what?
Watch this.
Okay.